when people ask me, what do you look for in a business owner? I'm like, good people versus bad people.
Mm-hmm.
Good people, good culture, low claims. Bad people, bad culture, lots of claims. I was 51. I was sending out 10 resumes a day and getting an interview every couple of months. BBSI called and I said, I'm not effing selling comp, and hung up. Most business owners are kind of control freaks.
Yeah,
You know what that's like?
I do. I've always thought process was the big deal, right? If something's wrong, it's usually the process. The people, yeah, sure, there can be some stuff there, but usually you got to look upstream a little bit to see what's happening.
We are the biggest little company no one's ever heard of. We are the right fit for the right company, and man, are we a bad fit for the wrong company.
Well, everyone, welcome to another episode of the Risky Assets Podcast. Today is a really fun one for me. This is my buddy, George Sagadencky. George, thank you so much for being on the program.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. I was thinking about guests and I was like, who's a business owner? And from the start, I was like, well, George works for BBSI. But then I was like, wait, I think you've owned a business.
I have owned. I've owned several of them.
And then I was like, okay, this could actually be really interesting. And because you have an entrepreneurial mind and you still work for somebody, which is interesting, but you still have to run an office and all that, which we will get into. But you and I go way back now.
Yes, we do, Dan.
You're one of the only people I know that's been shot on the golf course. George and I were playing golf in Palm Springs, and man, it looked like
went down.
Yeah, went down. It looked like someone shot him in the calf. And
when you're old like me, those things happen.
Yeah, you are pretty old. What ended up happening? Did you tear any, or did you ever go to the doctor?
I pull stuff from time to time,
so
and it hurts.
It was just age then.
Yeah.
It really was. All right. Well,
like I'm down right now. I can't play for 2 months. My
no
wrist.
way.
Yeah.
Come on,
I'm
man.
down.
Well, we're big golfers.
Yep.
Obviously, we're in the insurance business, and we've worked together on a lot of stuff. And kind of a resurgence with the BBSI relationship, which has been really incredible for us because I've always enjoyed the platform. But what I want to do, just to kind of help the guests out, you started multiple businesses. You're an entrepreneur. BBSI is a PEO company, payroll, workers' comp, all that stuff for some context. But let's start through the journey. Like,
sure.
At what point did you decide, hey, I'm going to go start a business, and what did that look like, and what kind of business?
So it's funny because when you asked me to do this, I thought back to when I was 14, and I hadn't thought about this, but when I was 14, I lived in this apartment complex with about 60 people, and I started babysitting.
Okay.
Right? And then someone asked me to walk their dog, and then someone asked me to wash their car. And I realized, I think like 6 months later, I had a price list for everybody.
No way.
And I'd put it on their door for dog walking. There was a Dale's Jr. next door. I'd go buy them milk, or I would babysit. And so I always had that in my blood.
Sure.
I always knew I wanted to be a business owner. I just didn't know how or when it would present itself to me. And I don't know really where that comes from. Every job I had after high school, during high school, I got thrown into management right away, whether I wanted to or not. So I knew I had a knack for it. I didn't think it would take me to get to 40 years old before it happened.
That's when you started it.
So that's when I first started it.
Okay.
Yeah. So early on, I was about to leave for college, and my mom passed away. So that put that on hold. I got an offer to go play baseball in Colorado, and I did that for about a year. Then my dad got sick. And so I found myself at 24, not a lot of resources, not a lot of family. So I kind of dug in and went to work.
Sure, you had to.
I was, every job that I took it to learn a discipline, whether it was bookkeeping or human resources or sales. And I kind of had this 5-year cycle of industries that I would kind of go into just to learn it. So I found myself, I went back to school. I got involved with a camp called Ronald McDonald for Good Times that is at Children's a lot, which is why I know that hospital well. We talked earlier. And I was on my way to med school.
Oh, okay.
And I'm working for an ad agency part-time. And I'm about to take the MCATs, and I meet my wife, now ex-wife, 28. And I have to make this decision on what I'm going to do. I started with the ad agency. We did movie posters.
Okay, cool.
And so we had a lot of entertainment accounts. And then the owner's son started a promotional product company. And all of my entertainment clients were starting to buy hats and T-shirts. And so I kind of became a sales rep. And I was making really good money. And I had to make this decision. I'm about to get married. Do I want to go down this road or do I want to go to med school? Now, keep in mind, I'm 28 and 29. I haven't even taken the MCATs.
Right.
I'm a month away.
That's not a young man's game.
It's not a young man's game. And so I decided to go down the promotional products route.
Okay.
And I thought, I like it. The hard part is relying on 400 other vendors to do your job for you, which is a challenge. And most business owners are kind of control freaks. So we don't want that.
Yeah,
you know what that's like?
I do.
And I'm starting to build a real solid base. And I'm working for a guy who is so angry that his sales reps make more than he does. And I think to myself, what do you care? You have 10 sales reps. You're going to make money on all of them. Don't obsess about that. And I meet this guy playing basketball who had a large promo company. And he said, look, I just lost my number one. I want to sell. I need someone for a year. Is this something you're interested in? And I'll give you a percentage of the sale. I said, sure. So that year turned into 3, turned into 5 years.
He didn't sell.
It just didn't work out. It wasn't bad for me because I was working for a bigger company.
Still making coin.
I was helping him grow.
Yeah.
I was doing super well on the sales end. So they get bought after about 5 years by a company called Landsberg, which is a $15 billion packaging company.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
And so they come in and are going to, we're going to be family, and we're not family. And they screw everything up really quickly. And I'm 40 years old and I'm leaving the elevator. And one of the new guys who came in said something to me about yanking my $50 cell phone reimbursement, because that's what the corporations do. And it was either next to my birthday or around my birthday. And I'm like, I've wanted to do this forever.
It's that time.
And I did it. And I hired a girl who we looked across from each other like this, hoping the phone would ring. And I started Under the Sun Promotions. I had just me and her. And at the end of 5 years, we had 26 people and we're doing about $7 million. And we were a very creative shop. We did a lot of studio work. So
Sure.
if you're familiar with the studios, it's like the mafia.
Of course.
Once you're in, you're in. And once you screw something up, you're dead.
It's over. Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah.
And so Landsberg came calling about 2007 and said, all right, it's been 5 years and you took 20 of our people. And we tried to badmouth you and we tried to ruin you, and we'd like to buy you. And so I'm sitting in a conference room with Bernie Salvador, who's a 6'4" Hispanic, big teddy bear, wonderful guy, 5 or 6 lawyers. And I'm gone through the due diligence and they looked at my books and I'm literally, Bernie, I got to talk to you. So we pull him out and I go, I can't do this. And he gets across his big oak desk, gives me a big bear hug and says, hey, if you're ready again, let me know, give me a call. And so I drive off. So a year later, it's 2008, 2009. So the bank calls me up and I had 2 credit lines that I never were late on.
Yeah.
And they yanked them. And I said, why? I go, we don't like your business. I was getting a divorce. And I thought, well, I'm going to pick up the phone. He's going to tell me to pound sand. And I said, hey, Bernie, you want to relook at this? And he said, sure.
No way.
So we went through it again. So I sold in 2008, 2009, and I had a 5-year deal. And at the end of 6 years, it didn't work out so well. One of the challenges, not to get in the weeds, but I designed my whole accounting system and I had to incorporate my business into a $1 billion accounting system that's inventory based. I'm non-inventory based. It created more work for my team, created more work for my salespeople. And at the end of 6 years, we were unprofitable and everyone hated me. And these are people I've been with 20 or 25 years. And so I literally looked him in the eye and said, do you hate me as much as I hate you? He goes, yeah, as a matter of fact, I do. And I said, great, give me a check. I'm going to go on my merry way. I had no idea what I was going to do. So now I'm like 51 or 52. And
was it a good check?
My ex-wife liked it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was not go away. But actually, I spent 3 weeks like kind of golfing and drinking margaritas, but I didn't have any friends who could do it with me. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. I got to find something else to do. Had no idea what I was going to do. But I did experience getting aged out of the job market.
Sure.
Like I was 51.
Mm-hmm.
I was sending out 10 resumes a day and getting an interview every couple of months. So I ended up partnering and bought a print shop in Burbank, which kind of just gave me something to do.
Sure.
I bought a flameless candle company. I was doing a little bit of consulting, and BBSI called, and I can't use the words since we're on a show, but I said, I'm not effing selling comp, and hung up. That's all I heard in my mind.
Yeah.
And I'd applied to so many people.
Did you apply to them, or did they somehow find you?
I'm sure I did.
Okay.
I'm 100% sure.
You were just chucking it out.
But if you're on LinkedIn and you're sending
going.
resumes out, you're sending them out,
Yeah.
you don't know where you're going. And he literally called back and said, listen, jackass, you may be a good fit for us. Do your research. I'm going to call you in a week, and hung up. I'd never heard
That's
the term.
That's kind of gangster.
Yeah. Never heard the term PEO. Never heard of the company. Did a little bit of research, and I said, I'll go on an interview.
Sure.
And I went on an interview. And in those days, 7, 8 years ago, it was a 6-interview process. So the whole process almost took a whole summer because everyone was on vacation. And each spot I landed and got to talk to the area manager, I was like, ooh, this could be great for me. And Pasadena was, they hadn't opened that up yet. They had no clients.
Okay.
And they said, you get to go out to Ontario and train for 3 months. It turned into 12 months for a lot of different reasons. And it's the best thing I've ever done because I just get to deal with business owners all day long. I get to shake hands and kiss babies.
Mm-hmm.
And I genuinely love their plight. Like, there were days where I'm like, okay, that's rent, that's payroll, that's my kid's school, and which check am I going to do? And I know what that life is like.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like I'm going in there. I mean, we are the biggest little company no one's ever heard of.
It's crazy true. That's very true.
But I love their plight. I'm in awe of it. I love the journey, and I love helping throughout the process.
I've always thought that was the most interesting part because you did go through the gambit of actually being the entrepreneur. So then you could go into these meetings. And mind you, when we started our relationship, I was young. How long ago did you start at BBSI? Because
it was like
7
years ago. Yeah. 7+ years ago.
So I was 26 at the time, 27. And it was like, I was good at the business, but I didn't know who BBSI was till you guys figured, came in. I remember going my first meeting with you, and I was like, oh, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. And you were so nonchalant. You kind of have this way of sitting back anyway. And you were just cruising and just asking questions, and you just kind of owned it. And I was like, okay, I needed to know more. And I ended up, my first 2 years, I never placed more business with BBSI. I loved the way it functioned. And I guess with all of that said, what is BBSI? Because a lot of people here, this is an entrepreneurial podcast. I do think it matters to them.
Yeah.
What do you guys do, and how are you set apart from the competition?
Yeah, that's the question I get most is like, who's your competition?
Yeah.
And we don't have any competition. So we're traditionally we're PEO.
Right.
Not the traditional way where we own the employee, so we own the comp if there's a claim, or we own the wage and hour. I call us PEO hybrid or PEO-ish, and hopefully my boss isn't watching. He's not going to be happy with that. We work very uniquely. We do workers' comp, medical benefits, 401k, dental, and all of that has to be done in conjunction with the payroll.
Payroll, right.
And what is unique is we work in teams of 4. We work with a payroll specialist, a risk manager, an HR manager, and a business partner. And that team works with no more than 70 accounts. We don't hire kids out of college. We're not interested in training anybody. We hire old ass people like me that have a lot of really good experience. We are a very high touch model, as well as I do. Part of what I think you and I connected on is, one is I saw your entrepreneurial spirit when I first met you. Like, I knew eventually that's where you were going to go, regardless of circumstance. But we really want to get to know the business owner.
Mm-hmm.
We want to help them. We're going to go on site for accident investigations. We don't write business 50 miles from any branch. Everything, about 80% of my clients are within 10 miles of this branch. I ran into someone as I was coming in here who was a client.
That's great.
You've got a sound guy out there who's like with another company who's a client. So it's a very unique community.
Mm-hmm.
And we are the right fit for the right company, and man, are we a bad fit for the wrong company.
So you want to hear my pitch to people?
Sure.
How I go? Okay. You have a lot of these problems. Usually it's safety claims. They got something going on. Hey, I have this HR need. And I'm like, you guys are kind of all over the place. So I'll go in and go, look, I have this company called BBSI. Here's what they do. If you don't want your business to be interrupted in the sense of you want to do it your way and that's it, they're the wrong fit.
Yeah.
If you want to fix the problem and you're willing to be malleable, they will help you immensely.
Yeah.
And I can see it in people's eyes, like, well, I don't want to deal with someone telling me what to do a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
okay, it's not a good fit.
Right.
But when it is a good fit, I mean, I've seen mods go from 3 and some change, like 300 high to 65
Yep.
under your guys' watch. Right. And they were really malleable and they did whatever you told them to do. It was incredible.
Well, it's also not only that, because Chubb backs our paper.
Yeah.
And we are
that's a big
program.
Deal.
I'm not insurance.
Right.
The third account I ever wrote, the mod was $3.99. And most people wouldn't want to touch that.
Nope.
But when I met the owner, it was a mother and daughter, really nice people. The husband had just passed away. They were in Glendale. They owned the property. They had to sell the property to keep the business alive. And when they moved, 15 people couldn't make the commute. And after unemployment ran out, they had PT claims, which jacked their mod up. We saw that. They had good culture. They had a good safety program. We've now had them 5 or 6 years in our book.
Is this who you referred me to? Is this that little shot? Is the
No, that was the first client I ever wrote. This one was the third.
Okay.
Yes.
This great clients, it sounds like.
Yeah. Did that work out, by the way?
We're going through it, Grandal.
Yeah.
Is that what it is? Yeah, we're working through it.
Have you met the dad?
I haven't met them yet. I want that's the next venture. Yeah.
2 sisters. They're fantastic. The dad's
Very
from
sweet.
Cuba, and he is a character.
I love that.
Yeah, but that was the first account I ever wrote.
Okay,
so
got it.
It's my baby. Just take good care. Please take good care.
I will. But and so you have that, and what would you say was the differentiator for you? Like you say, so you loved it, and it was because of the entrepreneur. Like you get to be around them.
It's a lot of things. It's I have never worked with so many great people in my life. When I owned my own business, I had limitations on payroll, meaning
I see what you're saying.
You know, I couldn't pay the amount that we pay, that I get really well-educated, long-term people in their industry. I think that's kind of like, to me, hiring's a lot like dating. I know in the first 2 minutes, and I care more about how I connect with a person. I didn't know anything about PEO.
Sure.
Our top 3 salespeople knew nothing about PEO that have been with the company for now 10, 11, or 12 years. I've just never worked with so many great people ever. And even from not only locally to the Valencia Pasadena team, but to Vancouver. It's incredible. I closed a deal that was about 400 people, and my CEO was on the phone with me at 10:30 at night. That's not a lot of companies that a CEO is going to, I needed his help and guidance on a couple quirky issues that are going to pick up the phone and help you get through that. And that's the entrepreneurial.
What's his name again?
Gary Kramer.
Gary. That's what it was. I got to golf with Gary in Palm Springs for 9 holes.
Bloss. So Gerald's my boss. Gary's his boss. 2 great guys.
They were fantastic.
It's just a right mix of, you are really left alone if you're really doing the right thing and your business is growing and you're profitable. And for me, it's been such a blessing, because a friend of mine called me at the office about a year ago. It was like 10 o'clock at night. And he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Just doing some work." He's like, "You work like a dog." And I'm like, "I haven't had a day of work in 7 years. I haven't had a day." Rough days, you know. I mean, we dealt with I always say, in the old days, my promotional product days, I'm like, well, it's not like anyone died. I had a fatality for the first time, and that's hit me harder than I thought it would. It's just, it's weird.
I get it. That'd be like me when an E&O claim finally hits me. It's like, it never happened, and I'm sure it's going to mess with me, But also, one of the things, we're using the word PEO.
Yeah.
It's Professional Employment Organization, correct? Right.
Yeah.
They do interesting things. That market used to be the Wild West. When I started 13 years ago, it was like, wee woo, you don't go to the PEOs.
Yeah.
And even my old boss was like, no, PEOs are like your last resort. Like you've got nothing else to do. Now it's not like that.
Right.
And I think BBSI was heading that charge of being so legit compared to the marketplace that it wasn't a last resort. It was, how do we partner with you?
Right.
And so with that, you guys do a co-employment arrangement where who holds the Fed, who holds the state on the employment?
The employer holds the state, we hold the Fed.
Right. And that's how you're able to kind of pool everybody together on payroll, offer medical benefits. And then the medical benefits is new.
Yes.
Still fleshing, but it's been fairly successful from what I've heard.
We've had we had a little bit of a struggle in the Valencia market, because Aetna was at war with Mayo.
Yeah.
And And so we
right.
offer Aetna, and now we offer Kaiser. So it was tough going to guys like you and like, hey, let's talk about Aetna. And you're like,
who? Yeah, we can't do nothing.
Yeah, we can't do anything for you. So yeah, those are really fun conversations with Gary Kramer.
So, and then on top of that, the HR support is incredible, right? So even companies like Greyhawk in that like 25 employee range, you look at an HR person, you're like, I don't have the bandwidth to hire someone like that full time. Right. I don't have enough problems, but certainly stuff pops up where we need somebody. And then you go, okay, at 50, yeah, I could probably pay someone at 50, but do I really need to if I have a partner like you guys who I can just pick up the phone? It's already included in my payroll and my, my package for everything. It's like, hey, and they offer really incredible advice.
Right.
You've been gracious. Like whenever we have a question, we just call and then we just get to tell our clients for free, which has been really awesome.
That's awesome.
On the flip side, then there's the work comp, right? There's stuff that is really difficult to manage.
Yeah. I mean, comp in California, obviously it's a nightmare. I mean, I don't know. And one of the things is, as I navigated, like I didn't really know anything about comp, but as I navigated through BBSI, I would hear certain people go into meetings with business owners and go, BBSI, what's your goal? And I'd hear them say, no claims. Well, that's absurd.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. It's not. But what our goal is no litigated claims. So we average about 1 litigated claim every 9 months. Every team member, we have a claims manager. So when that employee gets hurt, we're calling the employee. We're letting the employer know, hey, did Bill make his appointment? If he didn't make it, why didn't he make it? And we want to talk them humanely through the process. I'm an ex-business owner. I had a small warehouse in 8810s, but when I had a claim, I'd be like, come on, really? Dude, suck it up. Come on. And now that was 15 years ago. So it's a different world.
It's changed. Yeah.
But we don't want that.
No.
We just know, when people ask me, what do you look for in a business owner? I'm like, good people versus bad people. Good people, good culture, low claims. Bad people, bad culture, lots of claims. And so we try to work with, if we have a contractor, a restaurant, we will show up with the owner's blessing on site unannounced. And we may just sit at the bar and observe. And we're not the gotcha police. We're not the OSHA police. But we know when that owner is on site, everyone's well behaved. Their PPP's on, their goggles are on. We may see a wet spot on a restaurant floor that sits there for 45 minutes. And so we want to talk and help educate the owner on what to do. We'll fly drones over sites. We'll sit 2 blocks away and fly drones and sit down with the owner and go, okay, this guy's not strapped in. And here's what you want to do. We just recently went back to writing roofing, which we hadn't done forever. And the reason we hadn't done it is we went unannounced to 60 sites like 10 years ago, long before I was here, and found 2 guys tied in. And we're like, let's get out of Dodge.
2
out of 62. Yeah. So
that's bad.
Yeah. So, but we're kind of back in that game. But, it's also the investigation, like, why did this happen? And what can we do to prevent it?
Sure.
We go on site and do safety trainings. We do them with the managers. And also to go back to your point of like, when you hit 50, we're a good resource, but we're also a good resource if you have 100 employees.
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
Or 150, because that HR person may not know what's coming. Like starting January 1st, all employers have to now have a poster that says if you get hurt, not only are you entitled to workers' comp, you do not pay for the lawyer. In big letters, that has to be up with the wage and hour. So a typical HR person may not know that. So it's a fun state we live in. Makes work life really easy.
So
again, I couldn't do it.
It's
I
challenging.
I couldn't do it.
Well, even for me, right? Like I'm the forward push guy in the business. Daniel in my office is my like, hey man, just make sure it all doesn't break behind us. Right. And that's more of the stuff that you're talking about. Operationally, Daniel has to deal with all of that stuff. Right. Now he loves it, which is probably the opposite of us. Like it makes my
skin crawl.
Hey, I need this. Work harder. Like that's the only thing that comes in my head. So I just wasn't the right guy.
Right.
But it is challenging to find people that want to be in that space, love that space, and want to run that many people, right? Because people are complicated. It's just the reality of it. Even good people. Stuff's complicated. So with the safety stuff, though, that was always what I pitched. Obviously, as an agent, right? Workers' comp is always such a big deal. And it was a good way to have a little bit of that, like I get to practice what I preach. Like, hey, someone's going to go out there and do safety meetings. Right. So, because it's challenging to get a third-party service to show up on time, to talented at what they're doing, connect with people, bilingual. There was all these things that were challenging to like live up to what I was saying.
Yep.
It was easy with BBSI, and I felt like that's always been a great part of the formula.
Yeah. And it's always a challenge. Like you always embraced us, which was great. So it made it easy. But a lot of brokers we build such a close relationship with the business owner when we get to renewal and they're showing up for the first time in 12 months, they're a little uneasy with, so it's always a balancing act of like, I want to involve you as much or as little as you want. But ultimately my goal is I sat in front of this client and said I was going to do X, Y, and Z, and I want to make sure we're doing X, Y, and Z.
Well, so again, maybe this is where I always created a little bit of space, but I was like, you're going to work with BBSI. They're going to run it. If you at every point have a problem, call me. I never wanted to be butting myself into it. I always wanted to create a little bit of separation. As a salesperson, it always served me well because they were never like, Charlie did X, Y, and Z. It was always like, yeah, it could be a BBSI thing. So I feel like that was what everyone should do. But at the same time, I embraced it because it worked.
Yeah.
I watched my largest client go from a 360 something to a 65 over 3 years.
And sometimes we may not be competitive there and we get fired. And you know what? We did a great job.
But you work yourself out of a job. It was a positive experience for the client. And I guarantee you, they haven't gone back to having major problems. But if they did, they would go, hey, Chuck, can we go back to BBSI? You know, I know that would be the conversation.
Yeah.
So anyway, and back then the payroll wasn't as seamless.
I could not have said that if we were having this talk about 3 years ago. Yes, I will, full disclosure, I will freely
But now
admit
it's I mean, leaps and bounds more efficient. It's more user-friendly. Everything about it is incredible.
People ask me how I know it's so efficient, and I say,
you don't hear about
haven't had a phone call.
Yeah, you don't hear about
in
it.
Years. In years that somebody was mad about that.
Yeah, and so like the company has come a long way. Also, fun fact, during COVID, I bet big on BBSI. I wasn't making any money. The whole stock market tanked during COVID, and I was like, I know what BBSI is doing. They're not losing money.
No.
So I threw a ton of money. I pulled money out of my HELOC.
And you just got the split?
Oh,
you
man.
still have it?
No, I sold it.
We just did a split. We just did a 3-for-1 split.
That would have been nice. No, I basically didn't get paid for a couple months, and it was my way to get some income, in my opinion, was to like float myself. And then once all the stocks got back to where I bought them, where I thought they would be pre-COVID, I sold them.
Right.
And I made good money on it. And BBSI was one of those.
Nice.
So I've always had a lot of love for BBSI.
Love it.
So on the employer side, right, you talked about good, bad. There are things that I listen for, right, as when I'm talking to somebody, if it's going to be a good fit. On your end, what are you listening for that good versus that maybe bad fit?
I'll give you an example of bad.
Okay.
So a couple years ago, I was at a powder coater in Sun Valley.
Okay.
The day after daylight savings time. And my phone was messed up and I was there an hour early and I'm cursing howling at the moon. I'm parked at a fire hydrant. And so I'm answering emails and phone calls and I could see the place over there. And if you know Sun Valley, there's no parking. And I'm sitting there, I watch this beautiful $100,000 Porsche roll in. Beautiful, take up 6 spots. This kid gets out. I don't think anything of it. He goes in, I go on with my time. So I go and I meet the owner, love the owner, 30-year-old, he's been there 30 years. Walk the factory. One of the things when I walk factories, I want to see if people are making eye contact with the owner. Are they saying their name? Like those are important things. And great guy, loved him. He said, look, I don't have anyone to hand this to. I want to golf a little bit more. I want to relax. And his mod had gone from a 0.8 to a 1.6 to a 2.4 in 2 years.
Yeah.
And I said, so what do you think's going on? He goes, I don't know. I want to slow down. I brought in this manager. I'm like, oh, can you bring him in? He goes, yeah. And it's the kid with the Porsche. And I go, how many people work here? He goes, 32. And I go, how many parking spots you got? He goes, I don't know. Because I'm going to get a ticket. I'm over there by the fire hydrant. And I said, okay, cool, thanks. And walked him out and said, look, you are a really good guy, but that's your problem. He's been here 2 years. And I could see that right away. And I said, if you lose him, call me and I'll work with you. I never did hear from him. But that's something that I look for. Just in terms of, for me, it's part detective when I meet someone. It's part psychologist. I've always had a knack for reading people's BS. So that helps a lot in this job. When you're being told what you want to hear as opposed to, you know, my ideal client is a guy who makes this mug and it's the best mug in the world. And he goes and makes 1 million of them. And then all of a sudden he's got employees and insurance and hassles and problems. And he's like, look, I don't know how to deal with that. I just want to make my mug. That I can work with. the world's out to get me. Everyone's here to sue me. I hate everyone. Have a good day. It's tough to talk to that. And we've talked about this. Like, I don't look at I look at loss runs, but I don't live and die off them.
Yeah.
I don't really care about X mods. I think there's always a story. I think that it's a bit of a broken system because the CT and PT claims really skews the numbers against a typical business owner. It doesn't really make it fair, but that's a whole other podcast. We can talk about 6 hours for.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just really simple for me. I'm just looking for good people versus bad people. But that also came from 40 years of owning and blood, sweat, and tears and, selling a business, buying a business.
Yeah. I suppose hiring is a good way because you had to measure people pretty quickly to see if they're a good fit for a position and what are you trying to get out of them. So I'm sure that helped with that kind of instinctual process as well.
Yeah. And I live by the motto, hire slow, fire quick. We've talked a lot about A, B, and C players, right? And an A player is if you go on a vacation, you come back, your business is better. A B player is if you come back, it's the same. And a C player, it's worse. And I've never moved a C to a B in my entire life. So it may, I always talk to people internally when somebody goes, I go, I'm looking for volunteers and not hostages. You got to want to be here.
It's very true.
This job is a job of pure desire. And there's certain things. I just started a brand new sales rep. And I remember his question was, what do you look for? And I look for a guy who closes 2 deals on a Friday and makes 5 cold calls until 5 o'clock. I can't teach that. I can teach you PEO.
Yeah, that's the grit.
I can teach you to knock on doors. I can teach you to go, oh, you're a Steelers fan. Let's talk about the Steelers.
Yeah.
It's all easy stuff. But I can't teach speed in football. I can teach you how to block and tackle and do all that sort of stuff. But that's the hard part.
Speaking of, so Sarah's been our rep.
Yep.
And I don't know how that came about, but she's fantastic.
She is. So she was HR for Sarah was the one when I took over Valencia I knew the least about.
Okay.
Like I knew Shannon, I know Dennis, I knew Jamie. There were a couple other people there that I didn't know, but I knew Sarah the least. So that was kind of the wild card for me. And she was in HR for about 3.5 years. Moved her into the business partner role, which is kind of a team leader role. And when we had an opening, she sat me down and said, hey, look, I think in a couple years, I'd like to do this role. And I said, what are you waiting on? She goes, I don't know. I go, you know the product.
Yeah.
You know the clients. You're local to the community. She's got the best attitude of anyone I've ever worked with. She doesn't have a disingenuous bone in her body. But we had to split her between the BP and the BDM role. And again, hire slow. I thought I'd hire a new BP in about 3 months. It took me a year.
No way.
And she did yeoman's work. She's got 3 kids through COVID.
Yeah.
Husband's a partner in a law firm. So it's not like she's got a ton of help.
She's hustling.
She's hustling and she's working. She has been great. And she is right now, as we sit here, the #1 salesperson at BBSI. And she's only been in the role officially solo 6 months.
BBSI, like corporate, all BBSI?
All BBSI across the country.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I think we have 35 or 38 reps. We just had a meeting today and I pulled her up and she's #1. So
wow.
Yeah, really fun to watch. And that's another thing about us that I couldn't have sat here 3 years ago and said, like, there were 4 jobs 3 years ago.
Oh, sure.
BP, risk, HR, and payroll. And if you wanted to move something else, you could. But now that we're a 50-state PEO, now that we're expanding, medical benefits are opening.
Yeah.
There are jobs today at BBSI that don't exist, that will exist in 3 years that don't exist today. So it's really fun to see people go into different areas. It's my favorite part of the business. You know, my old BP went on to be an area manager. So he went to Reading and now he's in Long Beach, and really fun to watch people. And I get to sit there and go, fun job, right? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
think even for me, right, I have a lot of young people, pull them out of college or whatever. And maybe selfishly, I was like, I want to train young people because I want them to do it my way. Remember that control freak? I can be very like, no, I know the process. I've done it. Here's the best way to do it. I can get like that. What I didn't realize was that I was going to enjoy watching them kind of do their own thing within the system and then flourish and buy houses and have kids and do all that stuff, where I was like, wow, that was more rewarding to me than so far like the extra money that I've been able to make from it. The people thing is really, really rewarding when it's going well, and it's really difficult when it's not. We're still a young company. We've only been doing it for 2.5 years,
Right.
but like I could feel the difference between that rewarding side and how miserable someone can make you on the other side.
Yeah.
So the high or slow makes a lot of sense. Obviously, you hear that all the time, but we don't do a great job of that. We want to move people into positions quickly, so we're always like trying to go. But I've usually had a pretty good intuition on the people I've said let's move it quickly on them. So maybe there's a balance, but
I think that's the biggest difference, between you and me and our age gap is I have that 25 years of, I mean, I did it. I was a handful. Like, people who know me today are like, you're really patient. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm just old, and know that that way doesn't always work.
Yeah.
And especially in an industry driven where you can get my product from 90 other people. Your clients can get my product from 90 other people.
Sure, that's fair.
So I have to make sure that I'm genuine with what I sell, that I'm going to be able to back it up. You always tell people we're not going to be perfect, but when we're not, my business card has my cell phone and a direct line.
Right.
It's not an 800 number, And I also go by the mantra that like, you don't get paid for 9 out of 10 things to go right. You get paid for the 1 out of 10 that goes wrong.
You fix it.
And there's no relationship building if everything goes right. My biggest renewals that freak out is like, how's it going? Well, good. well, we never hear from them.
Yeah.
That's not good.
You're right. From a relational perspective.
That's not good.
Yeah. So
I mean, even I think I got to know Daniel the best, and I was very new at this when he had an account that signed with another broker, and she thought it was Daniel because the logo was just really close and it was the same. And it was just, it wasn't anything dirty. It was just like,
whoops. Yeah.
Kind of a whoops. Yeah. I was really new to the business and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And he was getting he was getting a little mad at me. And I'm like, what's he mad at me for? But working through that with him allowed me to build a genuine relationship,
And Daniel's, I mean, you talk about teddy bear for that other guy.
Yeah.
Like Daniel's he's a big softie.
And you guys take ownership. Like every client I lose is just like a piece of my soul, from the 2-person contractor to the 100-person landscaper. When they leave, I'm just like,
I know what that feels like. I take it a little personal.
I wish I didn't. I wish I could just let it go and kind of move on. But no, we take it super, super personal.
It's a good thing and a bad thing, right? So I get that. So from a then client perspective, right? You guys handle almost any industry. Now, I know you stayed away from roofers. You re-entered that. I mean, you're not going to oil rigs.
I'd say oil rigs are out, sports teams are out, but like we're back to animals that bite, and we're back to looking at roofers. We have traditionally been blue collar.
Yes.
That was never my philosophy. My philosophy, like I have a surgical center I have some dentists. I have a lady who got laid off and took an 18-wheel truck and turned it into a beer canning for small microbreweries that can't afford their own canning machines.
Wow.
So I always look for not just the typical contractors, manufacturers. Again, I love people. I love the stories they're going through. So I love to hear the journeys that they go through. Now, medical benefits has opened up 1 million doors.
I was just going to say, you can change the white collar space that way.
We're into the white collar space and more Pasadena, Valencia, we're starting to filter through with everybody else.
That's great. I would always say too, like we went out and quoted for it, and we had an issue because we're in Santa Clarita. So obviously the networks were tough. I was also in a group, we're young. So the composite rates, for those who know, composite rates, right? It's just everyone is a 41-year-old is basically what it maths out to.
Right.
And most of my kids are 22 to 26, and it just made it complicated, and the network wasn't there. But now I think that's kind of fixed, but we love the HR support. We loved being able to call somebody and be like, hey, we just don't know the answer. We need that. And I think the white collar space is just as vulnerable. So we think contractors are vulnerable to the comp stuff, like from getting injuries. The white collar space is just as vulnerable to like the employment stuff that stems out of needing that HR person.
We just wrote a large gold and silver trader.
Okay.
All 8810s, but they're having HR problems. And that's
a real issue.
Is probably not a fit that most BBSI offices would have thought would be a good fit for us. And that was a great referral partner because he really set us up to succeed. It was also an 8-month sales cycle for us because they were a little leery to move.
Sure.
And
yeah.
Payroll's always an issue.
Yeah.
Always got to talk about payroll. So
that's just one of the things that you have to deal with. I mean, even for us, right? Like we always pitch like if you can't do the payroll move, it's a non-starter. We can't have the conversation. It's always the first thing you got to get in there and hit the hammer on the nail until it finally breaks enough.
And I find that 7 times out of 10, once we do the demo, it eases their pain.
Is that the HR person or is that the owner? Because the HR person usually is the one that's like, oh.
Well, yeah, it's a lot of owners are afraid of their people. Like, make sure Cindy's on board with this because she, does my life so I can go golf 3 days a week.
Hey,
unhappy
Cindy's bad. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's different every time.
Sure. So you guys talked about like BBSI really expanding. What does that look like from a like overall growth? What's the trajectory? Are you guys trying to be in every state? Are you guys looking to always expand?
50-state PEO.
Okay.
Our business model is a little different. I was kind of the last of we'd hire an area manager, we'd build a team, and then go get the clients. So now we're kind of reverse engineering it where we put what we call an MDM in a market like Oklahoma, Tulsa, Nashville. And once they hit a certain amount of clients, then they go build a team.
I see. And so sales first.
Sales first. And then, so that's been new. That's really come from Gary Kramer wanting to expand our footprint as opposed to having, it ain't cheap to go build a Pasadena.
Well, it's a loss leader. Everything is expense. And then you hope it works. Where it's like now you can prove concept with someone who can sell it.
Right. I mean, the $1 million question is, and I've only lived in the hard market, comp is still the cheapest thing of all the insurances.
Yeah.
You guys are getting beaten up. So what happens, you guys get beat up on auto, you get beat up on GL, you get beat up on EPLI, and they know there's, I mean, I can't tell you how many meetings I've had. I'm like, yes, we're 10 grand more. When your mod doubles, you're going to spend 60 grand more. Mm-hmm. So I'll see you in 12 months. Sure
there
enough,
it is.
In 12 months, they come.
Yeah.
So, that's always a challenge. We're not the cheapest, but we're not the most expensive. And again, I don't know what you would compare us to.
But the resource difference, even if you said you're 10 grand more expensive, the resource difference, you get a piece of paper with most workers' comp carriers and the
Right.
Good luck. We'll see you in the next one. And on the flip side, you guys are employing all these services that just to go pay for them, right? Between payroll, HR, safety, all that stuff that would cost you way more than that. So I always thought it was incredible you guys were making money with everything you throw at people.
Well, we're also motivated. The first $500,000 comes out of our branch on a P&L standpoint. Mm-hmm. So I'm the only guy or gal you get to put in your business owner and go, I'm in this with you.
And I was going to bring that up because I knew about this, which I think is the fascinating, because you are partnering more so in that regard because your money, your bonus on your P&L, it is impacted by that. So what does that look like? So obviously you guys get bonuses. You start peeling claims out and paying first $500,000. It's obviously looks different. Everyone's impacted.
Well, yeah. So our reserves hit our P&L. So it's important that, our biggest thing is we won't really write anyone that doesn't have modified work duty. We believe if you sit on that couch at home and look at that TV, it's trouble.
Yeah.
If you really can't offer modified work duty, we have a volunteer program. So that person can go volunteer at a Salvation Army. You can't go beyond 30 miles of where they live. But that's another tool that we use to not get people to get very comfortable sitting at home. If they refuse a modified work duty, TTD's off the table, and that keeps the reserves down. So that's one of our main mechanisms that we do. And again, we just try to be humane.
Right.
If you were to survey 100 people who filed claims with other carriers, the number one thing is nobody cared about me. And look, if you're an owner of a company and you're working 18, 16-hour days and your whole livelihood's put on this, you don't have a lot of patience for comp. You don't have a lot of patience. You just don't. And it's not right. It's not right. So it's the way it is. So we try to be that buffer and we try to be that patient that look, if you're really hurt, we want to get you healthy and we want to get you back to work. If you're not, it's my fight. Yeah. It's also my fight. The other thing we do is every call is recorded with an occupational nurse.
Right.
So they are asking questions. Okay, you cut your finger. You have any of the body parts that hurt? Your neck, your back, anything like that? That's just a bullet when we go to deposition. It's not a magic bullet.
Right. It's leverage.
It's leverage.
Yep.
We implore our people to have some sort of signing mechanism for their checks or their time cards that say, I've not been hurt on the job for 2 weeks. I've not been sexually harassed. Another bullet, all of these things that because it's bad.
I know, man.
It is. We will literally, our risk people will sit in a clinic until somebody bothers them. We want someone to come from behind the desk and go, what are you doing here? Because that's what the lawyers do. They sit in the clinics and hand out cards. So if you walk into a clinic, you should have an appointment. If you don't have an appointment, you shouldn't be there. So when we see clinics where we're getting an uprise in litigated claims, we will go sit and we'll time it. And then we'll sit down with the owners and say, look, are you policing this at all? There's only so much they can do. They could stand in the front.
Totally.
Like, I get that.
Totally.
But all of these things, not one of them is a magic bullet, but we believe that with all of this,
the cumulative makes a difference.
It keeps us down. Yeah.
That's incredible. So you've been doing this job now for how long? 7 years now. Good stories, bad stories. Like, what has been the most interesting thing about BBSI, just being boots on the ground?
We had a guy in a lift ladder truck.
Sure.
20 feet in the air. Truck got stolen while he's in the bucket.
No way.
Police chase. Wasn't tied in. Eventually, truck rolled. He was banged up a lot, but he ended up surviving. But, like, how do you steal a truck with a dude in a bucket? Like, I don't even know how that happens.
I don't know how that. Man, imagine your luck to be the guy in that.
Oh, my God.
He's lucky he made it out.
Yeah. And like I said, the first fatality was tough.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, you're dealing with human beings that you want what's best for them. But there's this outlying force that is kind of preying on them. Like, I can't tell you how many people at the end of 9 months go, well, I didn't realize I'd have to sign this and leave my job for this paltry settlement.
Yeah, so we can talk about, I was actually having this conversation this morning. My opinion of the system is there's too many attorneys in the pot, and they're all screwing the people that we're supposed to be helping, which is the employees, first of all, because they usually get cuts on the settlements. And then we want these jobs for employers to create them. And it's so difficult to do it because you got some, Larry H. Parker or some whoever that's just like waiting to prey on them. Do you feel like it is a little bit more complex than that? But the apartment market right now, they can't stop turning in habitability claims.
Right.
The workers' comp market is all injury stuff. It's everywhere.
I can't tell you how many litigated claims we get where the body parts are wrong or the guy's name is wrong or the girl's name is wrong because they're just Xeroxing the names,
stamping them through,
stamping and stamping and stamping. And because we cap settlements for the lawyers, I want to say 15%. I'm not even sure if that's accurate. It's just a turn and churn business. That's
what do you think's the big solve then? Like, if you were to say, hey, I'm running, I want to be the commissioner, what's the big solve?
I would take out CT and PT claims.
Okay, how do you deal with that?
Well,
because obviously now I've been in the system with that forever, but what does that then look like to flip it?
Well, it takes out the legitimacy of, like, when they get a PT claim and go, well, why didn't they file 6 months ago? Why didn't they file that 9 months ago? They never told me about it.
And PT, by the way, is post-termination.
Post-termination, and then cumulative trauma. The problem with cumulative trauma is if I'm hiring someone old like me.
I get to discriminate now because it's wear and tear is typical on the body.
Right. It's wear and tear. And I only have, as an employer, have to own 1% of that. So once they've been there a week or two, you own 100% of that wrist or that back or that stress claim. There's no one size fits all, but to me, the main drivers are CT and PT. And there should be some mechanism that if you don't file a claim in a certain amount of time, you don't get a claim. I mean, it's why do you get to come back 12 months later because you couldn't find a job or your unemployment ran out and now this is the problem. One of the other things too, and I hear this a lot with the older workers that are filing claims, they'll say to us, like, this claims my 401k. So I know that employers are frustrated that we're now forcing 401k and Cal Savers, but I think that hopefully might alleviate certain things,
I've always said desperate people have to do desperate things. And if you put them in that position, it's my family or yours, right? And that's a really difficult place for anybody to be. So that can make a lot of sense. I've always felt the health insurance offering too, like, hey, I don't need to limp in on a Monday if I got hurt Sunday evening when I have health insurance that's paid for by my employer. I can just go to the hospital, right? Like
when you talk
benefit.
about what I look for, that's one of my first questions. If you offer health, that's a good partner for us, you know, and I know that's tough. That was one of my biggest expenses as an owner, you know.
It's a big expense for us.
Really the other thing I would say that's really tough on the business owner, because this happened to me as an owner, they don't cap comp dollars on payroll. So if you got a salesperson making really big coins, my gold and silver traders, you're paying comp on every nickel of that. That should be capped at a certain, just like we cap Social Security. You know, that would help alleviate the burden on the employer. You know, and it's also just a state mentality. You know, we've talked a lot about this. I think when I met you, you were there and I was here, and now
you're creeping.
You're still there, but I'm like, okay,
creeping towards the middle.
I might be over there a little
bit. We've had some of those conversations. Like, hey, George changed a little bit on that. You know, like where did that come from? But you know,
I don't agree with the minimum wage increase. You know, it doesn't just affect fast food workers. If I'm a mechanic across the street and my guy says, I need 25 an hour, I can go work half as hard for $20 an hour. I don't know that the industry was meant for living wages. It was meant for kids in high school and college and maybe retirees to supplement their income. I think that's been a big burden, higher wages, higher comp dollars, all of the above.
Yeah.
And I also think literally it's a 5-year system you go back on comp if you think about it, because this year doesn't count. In your current year, you don't have that year hit. Then you've got the 3 years. So you're paying a penalty for something that happened
a long
5 years ago.
Yeah.
What were you doing 5 years ago? You didn't have a business.
No.
You were, you know.
Well, sophistication too. You can change so much.
Yeah.
Not in 5 in a year. You can change how sophisticated a certain thing, a safety process, whatever process in your business is.
Right.
So I agree with that. And I get you want to penalize the bad employers. Like, hey, you do this poorly, you don't do safety, you're going to get hammered for it.
Yeah.
It's just, man, they always try and change the formula to make it better, right? The XMod formula. And I'm like, one way or the other, it still doesn't solve the underlying problem, right? The cake still sucks.
Right.
Yeah, there's still an ingredient that shouldn't be there is missing.
And part of it is like, look, we can do what we can do when we want. When I was at Landsberg, who bought me, that's a box manufacturer. Huge warehouses, 100,000 square foot. And it was plain and simple. 3 injuries in a year, no matter how good you were, you're fired as a division manager. So there weren't a lot of division managers fired. So it's all about how motivated you are to do it, in my opinion.
So you were talking about that contractor, people not being buckled in, owner not there. And first thing I thought of was whoever's managing the site is not doing it properly.
Yeah.
So I've always thought process was the big deal, right? If something's wrong, it's usually the process or the people managing the process. The people, yeah, sure, there can be some stuff there, but usually you got to look upstream a little bit to see what's happening there.
And COVID really took a toll on the business owner. I can't tell you how many business owners I'm like, look, the guy's had 3 eye injuries in 4 months. He's not wearing his goggles. What do you want me to do? I can't find people.
Who else?
I want you to write him up. I want you to suspend him. I want you to send him home without pay and send a message to the 80 other guys that we have these here for a reason. And basically all our workforce, which is very much blue collar for the most part, they're hiring people that can fog a mirror and hoping for the best. Now, I do see that changing a bit. It's definitely getting better.
Well, blue collars, I mean, we just did my previous podcast, like it's becoming a little bit more sexy, right? Like I don't have to go get $100,000 a year worth of debt to go get a degree to sit at a desk. Now I can go no debt, start making money, get a trade. So I think there is some attraction to that industry again, which is deserved. So I would agree with that statement overall. But it still doesn't mean it's not complicated. And it's going to take time. There's more people retiring than there are entering still. So it's like, yeah, workers are a real issue. Are you guys feeling like you have any problems attracting for these positions? Or like, how are you guys attracting people to BBSI?
Yeah, it's different for different markets. One of my struggles is I'm not competing with Insperity or TriNet for people. I'm competing with Paramount, Disney, and Netflix, who pay $1.20 to have someone answer phones. So then you start to get skilled positions that are getting plus and plus and plus and plus. And so that's always been the challenge for me. The hard part for me too about talent, payroll's a little easier. Business partners are a little easier. The ones are risk and HR. If I'm a HR manager, you're my HR manager, and I work under you and I don't do what you like, what are you going to do? You're going to write me up. You're going to walk around with a gray envelope. You're going to talk to my manager. You got a lot of levers. How do you talk to Mr. Business Owner that does what he wants, when he wants, how he wants? You've got to build a relationship. You can't just say, well, you do this or you're in trouble with OSHA. It takes time to build that relationship to help them move the needle. I mean, I had a car wash I had to fire. The guy's like, my 3 friends have car washes and they're with, I won't use the name, with the first of the alphabet company. They pay their people $10 an hour and they don't audit it. And I'm like, well, you can do that. Go ahead, but I have to fire you. And he did that. And I had
just
to
paying people under minimum wage.
Paying under minimum wage.
Nice.
So, that's all part of our process and our, even when it comes to renewal, it's not just one person's decision. We get risk in HR and payroll and, what's this client like? How much time? Are they chewing up the right amount of time? Are they beating us up every time something goes wrong? It's the mean factor. Like if they're too mean, we work too hard to be.
Well, I know you don't like that at all. You're just like, hey, just on delay. It's just this is too much for you. Well, I see some of the spiciness come out every once in a while when you have those conversations. But so I tell my young guys, because when you're young or you're learning the business, you probably see this too. You need the revenue to come through the door, and sometimes I go, hey, you're training those people. For however you let them in the door is how they're going to stay in that house. Yep. So if they're beating you up and they're yelling at you and they're cussing at you, I'm like, you're going to do it to your staff, which then I'm going to have a problem with. Yep. And then you're going to be on your desk and it's not productive. It's like what you do and how you set expectation matters. Yep. So I know you do that a ton. Yeah. And it only benefits, I think, you and the business to do that, unless I see it, as you see it somewhere different. Yeah. Where's BBSI going? So what's the next venture? So you guys added medical. That's big. Like what's the next forefront?
Yeah. So we're really developing our internal, for one of the new things for us is now an employer can download their own documents on our My BBSI site. That's new. We're about to be able to sign documents. Like we had clients who had NDAs, but we couldn't Adobe sign on our system. So we're changing that. We have a learning management system that has hundreds of trainings for all types of industries that you can buy a license to. These are also good for modified work duty that you may put people in front of safety videos or work like that. The medical is definitely expanding. We want to be a 50-state boots on the ground PEO in the next 10 to 15 years. Medical is going to help us out with that. And really just continue to expand the marketplace with good people internally. I mean, that's really what we're looking to do.
So I hear a lot about tech and AI right now. So you guys, you are embracing the tech, but you're embracing old school Flintstones mentality of being there.
Yeah, I had a discovery call yesterday, and really nice lady, company in Burbank, and she asked about HIRS, and she had about 6 technology questions, and I kind of called her back. It was a Zoom call, and I called her back, and I said, look, I don't know that we're going to be a good fit for you because we don't really have that yet. We may down the road, but we're still developing and beta testing and going through the process. We're comfortable telling people that. Like maybe today's not the right time. Maybe in 2 years will be the right time. And she goes, oh, no, I need the people because blah, blah, blah doesn't call me back. I'm like, well, we'll call you back, but you're not going to get that. Right. So there's a yin and a yang. I will tell you when I started, we had 4 people in IT, and I think we're over 64 people right now. So there was a financial commitment. We know that's what, and we survey clients and we listen to it. Mm-hmm. Part of why we got medical benefits is survey year after year was like, please add benefits.
It is a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah. And don't bundle them like other companies. Like you can write the medical with the payroll and not have the comp. You can have the comp and the payroll. You can have the payroll only and have the services. So we try to make it as user-friendly as possible. I would say, again, 3 years ago, we were a little clunky. Mm-hmm. You knew us back then, right? Yeah. It was this and this and this and this. I think you were the first meeting where I closed something. Was that the guy who sold to the pizza place?
Oh, dude, I don't remember.
Was it me? Yeah, and you were like, "Well, we have to have another meeting." I'm like, "Nope, we're done. We'll write it. We're good."
Oh man, why am I blanking on this?
It was in yeah, I don't know. I can't. But I remember he sold because he sold. Remember he bought Pasadena pizza.
I don't think this was me.
Yeah, I think it was. I got to look it up. It may have been Daniel now that
it might have been Daniel.
It might have been. It definitely wasn't both of you.
No.
But yeah, we're trying to streamline the process, and we are left alone individually at the branches to have
That's
some
unique.
leeway until you screw stuff up.
Right.
And then when you screw stuff up,
That's very unique for a big
it's
company
very
like
unique.
that.
And it's we're not a perfect place, but we are the right place if you're the right person. You know, you gotta want to be self-motivated, and you gotta want to not get that pat on the back. I try to do it with my team all the time, make a big deal out of that. But, you know, for our roles, my role, you don't really get that.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't talk to my boss.
Sure.
Unless I have to get something approved or something cleared or, you know,
Sure.
something that's unusual.
At the top, it kind of can be a little thankless and lonely. So in general, I get that that's kind of how it works. But
that's a business owner.
That's a business owner.
Right? You're the last to get paid. You're the last to go on vacation.
Life.
Yep.
You know, I signed up for it. I love it. But what I would say too is for my pitch, because I think it's a phenomenal product. And I don't think it's a surprise that like the 2 branches that you run have grown and have done well. Like you're incredible at doing
Appreciate
people.
that. Thank you.
And I've really enjoyed our relationship. I love golfing with you.
Yep.
Like it's been a really good time. You're older. Like you're my dad's age. You're old, but like I always feel like it's just a buddy who I'm hanging out with, and I've always appreciated that. Like you treat people well.
Thank you.
So I've just thank you for the relationship.
I love the relationship. You guys are one of my favorite referral partners. I love watching your growth, and I love what you guys are doing. Just keep doing it, man.
I appreciate you, buddy. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely, my man.
Appreciate
and y'all,
it.
if you enjoyed that, let me know. If you have any questions for George, I will put his information down there, and he would love to talk you through it. And otherwise, thanks for listening. We'll see you soon. Take care.